Hi, I'm Christine Davis for the Hook by Adventures in Americana, and today I'm joined by Lily Vakili, a singer, songwriter, musician whose work draws on a life shaped across cultures, disciplines, and creative paths. Following her 2025 release of Oceans of Kansas, she's now returning with a new EP, which comes out May 8th, titled Live Wire, and recorded in the studio with her touring band to capture the immediacy of her performances. We'll talk about the stories behind these songs, the decision to record them this way, and how her journey continues to shape her music. Lily, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you. Thank you, Christine. It's really a pleasure.
Congratulations on the new EP. How did you come to realize that you wanted to create a live studio album rather than a standard production?
What I found most compelling as a performer is, of course, to perform to an audience with the band in the moment. And that is where, to me, the connection with an audience happens. That is where you're able to experiment somewhat with the music that you've created. It's also a bit of a test of the band, of like how if you have a really tight band and you get along that's even better, right? You get along, you're a tight band, and then you're playing live to an audience. There's just nothing like that in the world, from a performer standpoint. And when we've been on the road, a lot of times I've been told by members of the audience and people who, claim to be fans, and, they're like, I have your vinyl, or I've, downloaded your music, but seeing you live is totally where it's at. Like that's who you are. And so I was getting this feedback on the road and really thinking about it. And of course, I decided, look, I'm going to go back and talk to Reed Torchy, who is the producer of Oceans of Kansas and also my prior EP, Tannersville. And I mean, I know he totally gets the beauty and the importance of being a live performer. And when I talked to him about this, he was like, well, I mean, you guys just came off the road. You're kind of primed and ready to go, let's get the guys in the studio. And he's like, you sure you want to do this? I'm like, yeah. He says, because, it's like, he said, so do you really no headphones? So like we went down the list. No headphones? I'm like, no, no ISO boots, no, no click track. That's always the killer, right? No click track. And I'm like, maybe it's because I work with such phenomenal musicians, and I really feel that way. And the percussionist, the drummer, is just the heart of the band, in terms of, you put there's such trust that you put into each other as you play live. And I am completely confident. I mean, it's so funny because Joseph Yount was like, are you sure? No, really, he's the drummer. And I'm like, yes. I said, I'm completely confident in your ability to be our click track. You are our metronome, that, and, our beating hearts, right? This is our metronome. And there's a freedom in doing that. And of course, as Reed also pointed out, there's a risk in doing that. That's one take, one track. It either holds together or it doesn't. And, there's no do-overs, there's no comping. But I really felt like these guys, Eric Burns, Drew Hart was playing bass in this instance. Seth Barton has also played bass, and Joseph Yount. I felt so confident and comfortable with this group of musicians. They're so generous and paying attention. I started out in theater, and I remember how incredible it was to act opposite an actor who was really paying attention and listening not hogging the stage or whatever. And the gift that is, I mean, it takes tremendous, I think, skill and confidence, self-confidence, to be able to support someone else on stage and understand that that actually is for the benefit of everyone. That in doing that, you're improving your own performance. You are improving the offering that's being made to this group of people, the audience, who have come, taken time out of their lives, and their worries and cares and costs and whatever else is going on, to be there listening to you. To me, the beauty of playing together, the way an orchestra plays. This is the way a baseball game is played. That nobody's in isolation booths. I threw that pitch perfectly. Wait, let me do it again. Let me try. No, it's live. We were really happy with the way it came out, and we had a good time, and that's that's part of it too.
100%. Lily, you're a musical storyteller. I'm curious what that feels like in practice. When a song begins for you, is it more like remembering something or you're discovering it as you go?
It can truly be either. I think it is. I often choose to enter the creative space. And sometimes you have to, of course, make that creative space when there are so many demands on your time and your other obligations, and that you do have to attend to, but you have to, one has to be, or I have to be, really specific about choosing to making time for that creative space to be available to me. So from a songwriting perspective, there are the memory thing comes to me. The memory of the tissues, the crumpled Kleenex tissues in my mother's house coat. And, I guess almost like a prompt, right? That will take me down this path of contemplation, and words will come that are associated with that time and all of that. But there are also the times, and I consider my guitar to be my companion, great source of solace, like a Labrador retriever. you know uh and so I spend time with my guitar, and so sometimes it's in the exchange between the instrument, the strings, and the resonance. I'll be inspired by whatever that is happening at that moment. A sequence of chords will prompt um a phrase, a couple of words, a feeling that I want to explore and then put into a song, in the context of a song. I view this all as storytelling, whether there are words involved or not.
You spent your early life moving between very different places and cultures. You're born in Honduras, then moved around a lot because of your father's work as a tropical plant pathologist. You also lived in Florida, Thailand, Puerto Rico, and Iowa, and your first language was Spanish. Do you feel like those experiences gave you a more worldly perspective, and does it show up in your writing?
Well, I mean, it can't, whatever it is, it can't help but show up in my writing, because it simply is my my history, and I think coming from that kind of a background and living in different cultures, it, for me at least, instilled a kind of open-minded curiosity, my mother, who was just a tremendous, role model for me, I remember asking her, I'm the fifth of six children, and just a little competitive. So we all are. And I remember asking her at one point, like, Mommy, what would make you the most proud? Because, of course, I'm thinking of taking notes. I'm going to do whatever that is. So, I can be the one. And, and she said, what would make me most proud was to have raised compassionate, kind individuals.
So before music became central, you were working in other fields, dance, theater, and even law. And you also currently maintain a work and family life that's separate from music. Do you hear any of those influences in the way you structure your music or your approach to performance?
I am mindful that uh, creative expression belongs to no one person. And that creative expression is, how do I put it, is free in the sense that it cannot be creative expression if it is censored. It cannot be creative expression if it's suppressed. This is why, I say creative expression, but I mean freedom of expression. I mean freedom of expression. I mean, this is, and yes, that kind of brings some of my, my law background, sure, right? The Constitution, freedom of expression. This is super, super important because without it, I think, an individual and a society withers. Whether you see it in the way someone might intentionally or not kind of silence another person and not allow them to speak their truth and speak it fully without either ridicule or denigration. I think it's a revolutionary act in the best sense of the word to display creative expression, to express yourself. Obviously, I'm not talking about hate speech. I'm not talking about promoting acts of violence, but I do think that artists are kind of the avant-garde. They are at the forefront of, pushing some of the ideas about what constitutes expression, and some artists more than others. But regardless, I look at any creative act, and that can be a garden, it can be a quilt, it can be rebuilding the carburetor, in a 1950 Chevy. Those are expressions, and they are valuable. They're worthwhile. They're not simply a transactional thing that's done for lucre, for money, or or by obligation. I always like to look at people and see how are they choosing to express themselves, to express their freedom, because it's such a precious, precious thing. And so when I write my songs, when I perform my songs, when I go out on the road as, a person who is a mother, has worn many different hats, has been around the block many times, I feel that in many ways that is my radical act that I'm offering up and saying, I'm doing this and I'm offering this, and may you find some joy and pleasure in it, and maybe inspiration in it, uh, and maybe just, a good time. There are a lot of roles that are imposed on us, and a lot of times I run up against some people who, just don't think I'm behaving. In some way that they think, or they would prefer to see me behave, supposedly because they see me through the lens of a particular societal role. And I consider it not just my right but my obligation to to test those assumptions by offering this thing that is important to me and that I value a great deal, and that I've invested a great deal of myself and my time and all that into. I find it interesting when people will ask me, yeah, well, I mean, what is your husband think, or what are your children thinking? And I'm like, I'm not an axe murderer. I mean, my God, I'm making music. But it does it tells me that there are roles that one is expected to occupy, um, whether as a woman, as a parent, as someone who has, a day job that doesn't align in most people's heads with, what I'm doing creatively. Although, it doesn't bother me at all. Um, but that's when you have to just say, well, actually, I refer back to my mother all the time, because she really just gave me the backbone to, um, she just said, if no one else will do it, what are you waiting for? No one else will do this for you.
You worked with Grammy Award winner and Emmy nominated Reed Tourshi on this project. What did he hear in your music that maybe you hadn't fully recognized yet?
Well, I think he definitely heard something. And what he heard was 2 albums ago, right? So when I first came to him and I worked with him on what was supposed to just be this small project, an acoustic EP called Tannersville. I was going to go out on the road. I was supporting the terrific John Douglas while he was on tour on the West Coast. And I was, the opening act. And I thought, well, it'd be great to have something in hand, that represents, this was a departure from Vakili Band, which was very, heavy into kind of a rock and a punk rock sound for a period of time, and great group of people. But this was a different path. And I wanted to have something to offer to reflect that. And so, Reed and I got together, and he just has a terrific, he's a great engineer and a really amazing mixer, but he's got a great ear. And I felt like he was hearing something in my voice, and he was capturing it with the placement of the microphone, with his encouragement, with his, as he would say, getting out of the way. It was interesting. He was like, no, you know exactly what needs to be done here. I'm just recording you. Go. But that's a collaboration. That is a true collaborator. That is someone who is saying, I hear what you're doing. I'm not trying to change what you're doing. I am trying to amplify what you're doing, trying to give you the space to do what you do best. And that was a great gift from another artist.
You revisit some of your earlier songs here. When you return to a song years later, do you feel like you're stepping back into the same emotional space, or does it become something else entirely?
These were songs that I felt were very representative of songs that we play on the road, on tour, and we we get such great reactions from the audience. Like Tai Chi or any other practice, doing it over and over and over opens new awareness, new understanding. Time and space shift differently. My awareness of what I was writing about and what I am now singing about change. From the time I wrote Lake City Blues to now, I've lost my mother. Many things, other things have happened. That's the most important one. I wrote it for her and for my father, about her and my father, and the nature of going home. What does it mean to go home? And so I don't understand how there is no way for me to sing that song the same way each time.
You've also got a couple of new tracks, Hearts of Fire and Anybody Knows, which is out now. Can you talk a little bit about the stories behind those songs and how they fit into the story that the EP itself is telling?
Anybody
They're very
knows.
different.
Yeah, and Hearts of Fire. I mean, those are the two new songs. They haven't been recorded before. Doesn't mean they haven't, been knocking around for a while, but they haven't been recorded. And this was it was such a treat to record these with this band. This band just sounds, I'm sorry, they just sound so good. The tempo was funny with Anybody Knows. When I brought it to them, I was like, guys, now look, I know this is going to sound really slow. The tempo is really slow. You know what I mean, right? Boom. Chicka bunga 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 boom. Chicka bunga bunga. And I said, I want to keep it that way. But of course, none of us could help trying it a little faster just to see what it was like. But then we came back to that. We're like, oh no, we're going to do this. We are slowing it down because it's all about waiting. It's all about waiting for that loved one, that lover, that crush, whomever, that person that you are just intensely desperate to see. And time doesn't move on any watch or whatever I say, with any wall, any watch or any clock or wall. No matter what you do, you can't make time move faster when you really want something to happen. And when that is someone showing up. And I just figured I can't be the only one who feels that way. So that's what I meant about the Anybody Knows. And I loved the play with the band, the way we played with that slow tempo and creating that nice slow burn. And it gave me a lot of space vocally that I had fun with, and I think the live recording really heightened that, like getting in the right frame, like the headspace to perform that song. I was thinking about, these performers in the 1940s and 50s, all of them in a room, the female vocalist right at the mic and the band right there. And, that emotive power of performing all together in a room and that being the product. So that really helped, I think, the zhuzh of that song. I just want to create the thing that interests me with a great group of people. And, with this band in particular, I have felt this kind of availability to move into kind of a jazz blues world that is tremendously exciting for me vocally and tremendously, intimidating in some ways, but in other ways I think, well, just go forward and learn what you can and be open and see if things come. I see these some of these songs, that being one of them, Hearts of Fire as well in its own way, as kind of these like an homage, to some of these great female vocalists. I am not saying I'm comparing myself to them. I'm saying they inspire me to try more, to experiment vocally, and see where it goes.
What else would you like people to know about the album?
It covers a lot of ground, but it's all within the heart. And I think that's best done with as little artifice as possible.
Check out Lily Vakili's new EP, Live Wire, out May 8th with the single Anybody Knows already available wherever you get your music. Find out more about the album and upcoming tour dates at lilyvakili.com. Lily, thank you so much for joining me today.
Oh, thanks so much. This was really a pleasure.